Almost every single legendary lord in Warhammer 3 has a set of legendary items they can acquire through quests, but which of these are the best? Today we're going through the weapons to find out what are the top 10 legendary weapons in Warhammer 3, and stick around till the end of this video to hear about how you can get a great deal on a standing desk from FlexiSpot. But for now, let's get into the list, starting with the Obsidian Axe. Honestly, it's not that crazy, but it's still making the list mainly because it takes one of the weaker Chaos Dwarf legendary lords in combat and makes him pretty damn strong. Right out the gate, Zatan lacks a lot of armor-piercing damage, and while he gets a lot more once he's on a mount, he's still not super overpowered, especially considering all he does is fight. With this weapon, he gets a huge stat boost in the most selfish of ways. We're talking a big boost to armor-piercing damage, 25% increase in his overall weapon strength, and sundering attacks, reducing whatever he's fighting's armor to make him hit even harder. As well as this, the passive ability will stack up his attack and armor-piercing damage even more for how many kills he gets, meaning you can send him into some chaff, rack up a ton of kills super fast, and he can easily have a ludicrously high weapon strength and pretty much never miss a swing with the melee attack. Now, it's not any higher since it's a totally selfish buff, but it's still pretty damn strong and really catapults this guy to new heights. Next up, we have the Blade of Shadow. Honestly, this one and actually the next one are pretty similar to the Obsidian Axe in the sense that the abilities make the wielder more powerful. In this case, we're talking more melee attack, base and weapon damage up to a pretty significant amount, making Be'lakor deal a crapload of damage and hardly miss a swing. This is also on a large character who hits many entities at once, so not only will he rack up kills faster and easier, he'll also be hitting a bunch more people per swing with that improved damage. Another great thing about Be'lakor is he has the Law of Shadows, so can rack up kills using that to fuel these increases even more, making his one of the easiest weapons to fill up. And aside from the effects to himself, the weapon also comes with some bonuses that will help his army and faction. The Authority is nice for buffing undivided units in the army, and that post-battle loot is great for gaining a ton more gold from battles, which is where most of your gold can end up coming from when playing as the Warriors of Chaos. This is higher than the Obsidian Axe since it has some benefits for the faction as well as the Lord. On top of that, the Lord can also reach higher heights a lot faster. And coming in 8th place, we have Slaughter and Carnage, yet another weapon whose main draw is the buffing ability it has, but this one's serious. Before we get into that, let's have a look at the other effects because there's some pretty great ones. Post-battle loot is of course great, and as Con, you'll make a lot of your gold this way. The corruption seems really mid, but is actually pretty top tier since high levels of corruption mean more chance of automatically settling as well as a range of other bonuses, not to mention the fact it harms all non-con factions, making the region way easier to take or keep under your control. Recruitment cost is another one that's pretty basic but can save you a crapload of money when building up late game armies, and then before we even have the ability, we have more attack and a nice chunk of armor piercing. The ability we have here takes that weapon strength and can potentially double it. Now, don't get me wrong, getting this, and to be honest, any of the other abilities to the max is a real challenge, and chances are you'll probably be lucky to get half of this. That being said, with Skarbrand, who is already an absolute terror in melee, giving him 50% all his damage is pretty wacky, and means pretty much anything you hit is going to shatter pretty much instantly. Like, you can get multi-thousand weapon strength with this and a few abilities and skills on a Lord whose entire thing is hand-to-hand combat. Now yeah, it's harder to get the stacks than it is for Be'lakor, but I just had to put Skarbrand higher since at maximum potential, I believe he'd wipe the floor with him even with Be'lakor spells. Coming in 7th place, we have Slagger's Slashers, moving on from totally selfish items to one that just works so damn well with the faction the Lord is in. We're seeing a few of the usual suspects here like post-battle loot and recruitment cost, which are both great for making and saving a ton of gold. The attack and weapon strength are decent, but again, the ability is the real hero here. Increasing the melee attack of nearby units in the green skins is pretty top tier, since attack is kind of their entire gimmick and the front lines is where all their damage is dealt. The leadership is nice for keeping units around a lot longer, but the attack is the real power here. You get Azhag in the middle of a bunch of elite black orcs and some monstrous support, and the damage they're going to do will be insane. Add on some casts from the Law of the Big War to buff it even more, and you can quickly max out the attack stat and have your units never miss a swing with the massive armor-piercing damage they already have. Now yes, it is a subtle boost, but in the greenskin faction, it can end up having a very significant impact. Coming in 6th place, we have the Rod of Corruption. On the surface, this doesn't seem like an insanely strong weapon since it's for a caster who is a decent fighter but not the best frontlines battler in the entire game. Now yeah, the extra attack and weapon strength are nice, but they're not game changers. The rest of the effects are where this really starts to come into its own. First of all, increasing capacity for Plague Priests in a Plague Rat faction just makes so much sense and will help you later on when you're building your armies and need plenty of casters. The decreasing cost for Wither is another great addition, and if you're going for a purely Plague-based faction, it helps a ton in making armored troops a lot easier to take down, while saving yourself a few wins of magic in the process. But by far, the most powerful part about this item, and to be honest, most items in this list, is the ability. Sending Skrolk into a bunch of enemies and popping this, he's going to get anywhere from 1500 to nearly 3000 damage for free directly to units HP bar, and outside of killing him, there's not much they can do about it. The 2-minute cooldown does mean you'll probably struggle to use all of these uses in your average Warhammer battle, but even a single use of this is enough to turn the tide of most fights. And can you really penalise an item for being so good you don't get time to use it 3 times? The only downside of this is putting Skrolk in some danger when casting, but as long as you bear in mind keeping him safe, he'll rack up a ton of damage without having to lift a finger. Breaking into the top 5, we have the Stave of Ruinous Corruption. This one is starting to get pretty spicy, especially since the majority of the effects don't even do anything for the Lord himself, who isn't a phenomenal battler at the best of times. All he gets is more attack and magical damage, which is pretty whatever, but it's still nice to have. Alongside this, the increase to Chaos Spawn capacity saves you a bunch of dread you can spend elsewhere on other units or upgrades. Combine that with the faction effects, and you have 5 capacity for them without spending a thing. And need I remind you that recruitment in the Beastmen is free. The Undivided Corruption is a mid bonus, but will make it easy to invade and control provinces, but the Beastmen never really struggled with that anyway. Yet again, the ability holds all the real power. So we have at least 5 Chaos Spawn we can bring into this army. Then with this ability, we have another we can summon whenever and wherever we want. Now, I know Chaos Spawn aren't exactly the best units in the game. Not much armor, damage isn't the best if it's against armor, and they take a ton of hits for their trouble. But they attack hard and fast and will stick around until they're completely wiped out. So why not summon them in the middle of enemies and have them do a big blitz of hits before they expire? It's even funnier once you realize that you can also have an ability that transforms a low HP enemy unit into yet another unit of Chaos Spawn. So you can have 7 on the field at once without putting any work into dread upgrades. I chose to place this so high since upgrading the capacity is essentially giving you units for free in the Beastmen, and the ability to summon even more of them just makes it even better. Coming in 4th place, we have the Warp Sword of Cain. Now we're getting into the really strong items, and you're going to notice a trend that's starting right here. The Warp Sword is a pretty selfish item, so we're going to be starting the top 4 with it since ambush defense chance is a little bit weak, but everything else is pretty top tier, especially for Malice. So, more melee attack on a guy that also has some of the highest melee stats in the game. Pretty good. 15% more weapon strength, both base and armor piercing. Okay, that's getting pretty cracked. And then the ability, which gives him a fairly significant replenishment, as well as 5% ward save. Yep, that's pretty stupid. And again, you have to bear in mind that all of this is on a guy who's already a one-man army that can reset his HP and vigor once he gets low and deal even more damage once he does. The ward save, it is only 5%, but it's still 5% damage he's not going to take from literally every source. The regen is really the insane part here, since the main downside of using Sarkhan is the damage over time he suffers until the battle ends. With this, not only will Malice regen HP whenever he takes damage, meaning you can end up having to kill him twice over if he reaches his cap, but once he transforms, the demon will also regen HP passively alongside the active ability he has, so this guy basically ends up with 4 HP bars at least, all while being the best fighter in the game and being able to take on pretty much anything in combat and come out the other side on top. And he doesn't even need to be fighting to activate this. As long as he's not broken, he'll regen HP. And need I remind you that the demon is unbreakable. Malice is insanely overpowered as is. Getting him this item makes him even crazier. Coming in 3rd place, we have the Blood Drinker. Have you picked onto the trend yet? Yep, regeneration is one of the best abilities to have in your game, since it just means enemies need to do way more damage to take you out for good if you're playing safe enough. The ability regens, and while it's the same as Malice with no ward save, I chose to put this higher for a few reasons. First of all, the other effects are actually beneficial to others outside of Vlad. More post-battle loot, recruitment cost reductions, and more corruption will be great for the entire faction and army. The extra melee attack and weapon strength are again great at buffing another powerful fighter to be even better, and magical damage is the cherry on top to cut through any resistance. Now the other reason I put Vlad higher is context. Vlad has this regen, alongside being a caster of the Law of Vampires, which comes with, of course, the most powerful regeneration magic in the entire game. He can actively heal himself and his army, as well as be passively healed whenever he casts anything at all with the Law's passive. As well as this, he can pick up the Hunger, which increases his regen even more while fighting, making him a regeneration machine that has to take a stupid amount of damage to be taken out. The only downside of this one is that you're going to reach that regen cap in moments, and all that extra regen will go to waste. But you can't really hold that against the item, so we'll let it off. Coming in 2nd place, we have the Sword of Unholy Power. Taking a brief break from HP regen to talk about another form. We've got pretty much the same buffs as Blood Drinker aside from the ability, and this time it focuses on power recharge and Winds of Magic reserves. Normally outside of Storm of Magic battles, Winds of Magic are in fairly short supply, and once they're gone, there's not really a way to get more. With this item, as long as mana is in melee against anything, he regens 1 reserves every 10 seconds, and while that doesn't seem like a lot, it's still free magic which he can then spend on whatever he wants, either from his 2 laws of magic he has access to, or from another caster in his army if you have them. Now, comparing this to the HP regen, for Manny himself, it's nowhere near as powerful, but for the rest of his army, and the battle in general, it's far better. He can use these winds however he wants, so that can be damaging the enemy army, buffing his own troops, debuffing enemies, or he can just use the Law of the Vampires and heal up his entire army and himself, only this way using magic instead of passives. Now you still have to use cast sparingly to ensure you don't totally run out, but now you'll always know that more are on the way eventually. And just before our first place position, we have an honourable mention, the Golden Blowpipe of Petui. It just has a great name and I want to say it. Okay, moving on to the number 1 position, we have the Chaos Tomb Blade. Finally, we reached the number 1 position, and it's for a lord that isn't even a fighter, so realistically, shouldn't even really have a weapon. But it's true, and yeah, the vampire counts are the top 3 weapons. The faction might be a little sucky and out of date, but these weapons are super hot fire, what can I say? We have the classic buffs to Heinrich's battle stats, and as I said, it might as well not have these since he's not going to use them anyway. The replenishment is a great touch, it can help him get that insane 1-turn full heal that vampires are so well known for, even sooner. But of course the hero is always the ability. We're talking HP regen and melee attack in an area around this guy. Now yes, HP regen is 0.1% of a unit's maximum HP per second, so realistically, you're not rocketing unit HP back to full in moments, but it's constant and affects every single unit in range of the effect, and it's a decently wide radius. It's like having a healing corpse cart, but he's fast on his mount and has access to the full Lord of the Vampires and of course Daddy Krell. Just plop Heinrich in the middle of some units taking hits, pop off a couple of casts and watch as unit HP slowly creeps back to full, and outside of killing him, there's not much that can be done about it. It is really a shame that healing isn't a trackable stat for battle value, because with this item and the magic, Heinrich's battle value can be insane. So those were some of the best items in Warhammer 3, but what about some items to help you in the real world? That's where today's sponsor, FlexiSpot, comes in. FlexiSpot are pretty much just a one-stop shop for healthier working, but today in particular we're going to focus on their E7 standing desk, which is actually the desk I use every single day to make videos. It's pretty funny, they emailed me saying would you like to partner with us, we can send you a desk, and I said slowly roll there partner. I bought one of these desks with my hard-earned money, and let me tell you, I've been loving it ever since. They're super easy to build, even I could manage it, you just pick your legs, pick your desktop, or use a custom desktop, it doesn't matter, screw it on, and it's all ready to go. I've got saved profiles for my standing and sitting heights, but I still have 2 slots left, so I could share the desk with another person, or I could test out a bunch of different heights of chairs, and I would still have plenty of profiles to save them on. As well as this, their desks come with collision protection, so if I decide to try and move it down and my chair's still in the way, it's not just going to crush it to 1,000 pieces, it'll detect that something's beneath it and stop moving. And don't worry if you have a desk that's got a load of stuff on it and is super cluttered, just like mine, it supports up to 125 kilograms, and has this neat little cable management tray which I use for my power bricks. Please don't comment on the rest of my cable management. I have a lot of wires here, so it became quite a challenge. I really can't say enough how much I've enjoyed the ability to just stand up for an hour. Plus, if I want to record a video sitting or standing, let me just show you how hard it is. Boom, now we're sitting. So if you are even remotely interested in a standing desk, I really cannot recommend FlexiSpot enough. And if you need any more reason to check them out, they've got 33% off on their website right now. So if you're looking to raise or lower your desk game, then check out the link in the description. Thank you very much to FlexiSpot for sponsoring this video. And that's our list. If you have any changes you'd make, leave them in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and if you want to know the very best mechanics in Warhammer 3, then check out this video to see just how overpowered they can get.